What happens when even the most fortified walls and the strictest protocols fail to contain the world's most dangerous criminals? Men whose actions, decisions, and influence are so extreme, so relentless, that not even the harsh conditions of Pelican Bay could put an end to their reign. These individuals, driven by control and fear, left authorities with no choice but to send them to ADX, Florence, a place unlike any other, the ultimate prison, the last stop for those who cannot be controlled. These are the 5 men whose stories redefine the meaning of the hardest of hard time. Pelican Bay has long been known as one of the most feared and heavily guarded prisons in the United States. It's a place designed to hold gang leaders, the most violent offenders, and inmates deemed too dangerous for standard facilities. Yet, even within its concrete walls and razor-wire fences, some individuals proved to be a threat too great to manage. Their crimes, their influence, their ability to control others stretched far beyond the confines of their cells. These men forced authorities to take drastic measures. They were sent to ADX Florence, a facility unlike any other, a fortress buried in the heart of Colorado, where the nation's most dangerous criminals are kept in near-total isolation. Known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, it is the last stop, the place where control is absolute. Today we uncover the lives of 5 men who earned their place in the most secure prison America has ever built. Let's begin with Omar Pory, known by many aliases including O.M. Mac, the godfather of the Bloods, and the Big Homie, was the man who brought the infamous Bloods gang to the East Coast. His journey to power began in the Bronx, where he established himself as a charismatic but ruthless leader. While serving time at Rikers Island, Pory created the Universal Blood Nation, a gang that quickly spread across state lines, recruiting members from New York and beyond. Pory's early crimes were a testament to his violent nature. At just 17, he committed his first robbery, and within a year he struck again. By his 20s, he was no stranger to prison life and had solidified his reputation as a leader among inmates. His appetite for violence was evident in 1996, when he orchestrated a brutal jailhouse attack on rival gang members using a makeshift spear carved from a Scrabble game piece. As the leader of the Bloods, Pory enforced his dominance through fear and strict rules. Initiation rituals were brutal, with recruits enduring 31-second beatings to prove their loyalty. He supplied gang members with semi-automatic weapons and ordered attacks on anyone who posed a threat to his empire. In one instance, a Bronx drug dealer named K-Born assaulted a Bloods member. Pory's response was swift and merciless. He sent a lieutenant and a 17-year-old gang member to K-Born's apartment, where they fired over 30 rounds into his door. Pory's violent tendencies extended to his own members. When a female gang member refused to continue participating in a fraudulent credit card scheme, he heated a knife on a stove and burned her leg, causing permanent disfigurement. This act served as a warning to anyone who considered disobedience. Despite multiple incarcerations, Pory continued to control his gang from behind bars. He smuggled weapons into neighborhoods, ordered beatings, and orchestrated attacks on leadership rivals. His influence was so profound that authorities knew keeping him in a standard prison was too risky. In 2001, Pory was sentenced to 50 years in federal prison. Recognizing the ongoing threat he posed, he was eventually transferred to ADX Florence. There, in near-total isolation, he remains a symbol of the violent culture he created. Omar Pory's story is one of power gained through fear. Ronald Heron, widely known by his alias Diggs, was more than just a rapper. He was a man who wielded power and influence in one of Brooklyn's most dangerous neighborhoods, the Gowanus houses. His music, which some claimed was just an art form, painted vivid pictures of a life steeped in violence and control. But behind the beats and rhymes was the harsh reality of a gang leader who thrived on drug trafficking, extortion, and acts of retaliation that left communities in fear. Heron's beginnings in crime were not unusual for someone in his environment. He started by selling drugs on street corners, quickly building a reputation as someone who could be both cunning and ruthless. As his name grew, so did his operation. He wasn't just moving drugs, he was moving power, ensuring that anyone who dared to challenge him would pay the price. And when retaliation was necessary, Heron didn't hesitate to enforce his authority, sending a clear message that he wasn't to be crossed. But it wasn't just his street activities that brought him infamy. Heron used his music as a platform, and while many dismissed his lyrics as exaggerated storytelling, prosecutors believed otherwise. His songs spoke openly about violent acts, describing incidents with chilling detail. In his YouTube videos, Heron appeared unbothered by the consequences of his actions, portraying himself as a man above the law. The evidence began to stack up, and law enforcement started connecting the dots between his lyrics and real-life crimes. The most damning evidence came when investigators linked Heron to a series of murders, each carried out to protect his criminal empire. These weren't random acts of violence, they were calculated moves to eliminate threats. Prosecutors argued that Heron's music glorified these acts, making it clear that his artistry and his reality were one and the same. When his case went to trial, the courtroom became a battleground. Heron's defense argued that his lyrics were a form of expression, not an admission of guilt, but the jury saw things differently. The stories he told in his music mirrored the evidence presented in court, leaving little doubt about his role in the crimes. In the end, Ronald Heron was found guilty of 21 charges, including 3 murders. The sentence was severe. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. But even with a life sentence, authorities recognized the ongoing risk he posed. His ability to influence others, even from behind bars, made him a threat that couldn't be ignored. To ensure he could no longer exert control over his network, Heron was transferred to ADX Florence, the nation's most secure prison. Today, Ronald Heron spends his days in near-total isolation, far removed from the streets he once ruled. His story stands as a chilling reminder of how power and influence can thrive in the shadows, even when the spotlight of justice eventually finds its mark. Coming up next is Tex Hernandez. He was a force to be reckoned with, even within the confines of the prison system. From the moment he entered, it became clear that Tex wasn't content to simply serve his time. He found ways to thrive, building a network of influence that extended far beyond the bars that were meant to contain him. His rise to power began with one of the most lucrative and dangerous trades in prison: contraband. Hernandez orchestrated a complex operation, smuggling cell phones, drugs, and even weapons into the facility. He wasn't working alone. His ability to manipulate those around him became his greatest weapon. Guards, inmates, and even those outside the prison walls became part of his network, ensuring that his operation ran smoothly. It wasn't just about the contraband itself. It was about the control it gave him. With every deal, every favor, and every threat, Tex solidified his position as a leader, someone whose influence couldn't be ignored. But his ambition didn't stop there. From within his cell, Hernandez ordered hits on rivals and those who posed a threat to his empire. His instructions were precise, his targets carefully chosen. The chaos that followed was a direct result of his ability to maintain control over people and resources, even from behind bars. Investigators uncovered communications that revealed the full extent of his reach. Coded messages intercepted calls and maps that detailed the routes used to smuggle goods into the prison. Every detail pointed to a man who was running his own empire, even in captivity. The prison system, designed to strip inmates of power, had become a place where Tex Hernandez thrived. His ability to manipulate and control posed a challenge that authorities could no longer overlook. Despite multiple attempts to curb his influence, Tex continued to operate as if the walls around him didn't exist. Eventually, the weight of his actions caught up with him. The decision was made to transfer Hernandez to ADX Florence, a facility designed for inmates like him, those whose influence and danger transcended the traditional boundaries of incarceration. At ADX, Tex found himself in a place where communication was nearly impossible. and his ability to control others was stripped away. While his transfer marked the end of his direct influence, the legacy of Tex Hernandez serves as a stark reminder of the challenges faced by the prison system. His story is one of power, manipulation, and the lengths to which some will go to maintain control, even when all odds seem stacked against them. The next from the list is Larry Hoover, a name that resonates far beyond the streets of Chicago. Known as the founder of the gangster Disciples, Hoover's influence spanned decades, transforming a small neighborhood gang into a nationwide criminal organization. It all began in the turbulent 1960s, a time when poverty and violence gripped many communities. Hoover, recognizing an opportunity, built a network based on structure, loyalty, and the promise of power. As the leader of the gangster Disciples, Hoover orchestrated a criminal empire rooted in extortion, drug trafficking, and violence. He established himself as not just a gang leader, but a figure of authority in Chicago's underworld. His operations were vast, with profits pouring in from illegal activities that extended into multiple states. Hoover wasn't just managing crime, he was creating an organization with its own hierarchy, rules, and methods of enforcement. Even when he was imprisoned for murder in the early 1970s, Hoover's power didn't waver. Instead, he adapted, using his incarceration as a way to solidify his control. From behind bars, he continued to run the gangster Disciples, sending coded messages to his associates on the outside. These messages contained instructions for drug deals, orders for violence, and strategies to expand the gang's influence. Hoover's communication methods became increasingly sophisticated, making it difficult for law enforcement to intercept and decode his plans. For years, authorities struggled to dismantle the network Hoover had built. His ability to lead from prison frustrated investigators and highlighted the challenges of containing someone with his level of influence. The gangster Disciples thrived under his leadership, committing acts of violence and expanding their territory while Hoover remained locked away. It was clear that a traditional prison setting was not enough to stop him. In a move designed to sever his communication with the outside world, Larry Hoover was transferred to ADX Florence. There, in near-total isolation, he could no longer direct his empire. The transfer marked the end of an era for the gangster Disciples, though the impact of Hoover's leadership continues to be felt. His story is one of resilience, power, and the ongoing struggle to contain those whose influence extends far beyond the prison walls meant to hold them. The last on the list is Perry Rourke, the founder of Dead Man Incorporated, better known as DMI, was a man whose name became synonymous with violence and fear within the prison system. Rourke didn't just create a gang, he built an empire, one that thrived on murder, drug trafficking, and unwavering loyalty. His early crimes set the tone for what DMI would become. From the beginning, he organized hits on rivals, ensuring that anyone who posed a threat to his vision was swiftly eliminated. His actions sent a clear message: DMI was not to be challenged. Rourke's gang, originally formed within the Maryland prison system, quickly gained a reputation for brutality. He created a culture where violence wasn't just a tool, it was a necessity. Members were expected to follow strict rules, with punishments for disobedience that were as swift as they were merciless. Under Rourke's leadership, DMI expanded its influence, moving from prison yards to the streets, where it became deeply involved in drug trafficking and extortion. What made Rourke's leadership so dangerous was his ability to command operations from behind bars. Even as a prisoner, his influence remained unshaken. Through secret communications and trusted lieutenants, he coordinated drug deals, orchestrated attacks, and maintained control over his growing network. Rourke's orders were carried out with precision, leaving little doubt about who was in charge. Rivals who dared to challenge DMI often found themselves targeted, with violence that served not just as punishment, but as a warning to others. Law enforcement faced an uphill battle in trying to contain Rourke's influence. His ability to operate so effectively from prison highlighted the flaws in the system and the lengths to which he was willing to go to maintain power. Every intercepted message and uncovered plan revealed a man who was always one step ahead, someone who thrived in the chaos he created. Eventually, the scale of Rourke's operations became too significant to ignore. His role in orchestrating widespread violence and maintaining control over DMI led to his transfer to ADX Florence. At ADX, Rourke was placed in near-total isolation, cutting off his ability to communicate with the outside world. For a man who had built his empire through connections and control, the transfer marked the end of his direct influence. Yet, the legacy of Perry Rourke and Dead Man Incorporated remains a chilling reminder of how power can be wielded from even the most restricted environments. His story is one of ambition, fear, and the relentless pursuit of control, no matter the cost. These 5 men are a testament to the sheer complexity of dealing with individuals who refuse to be contained, even within the harshest environments. Omar Pory, the founder of the East Coast Bloods, ruled with absolute authority, creating a culture of violence that extended far beyond the walls of Rikers Island. Ronald Heron, also known as Ray Diggs, blended his criminal empire with his public persona as a rapper, turning his music into an anthem for fear and control. Tex Hernandez thrived on manipulation, turning contraband smuggling into a powerful tool that made him a force both inside and outside of prison. Larry Hoover's reign as the leader of the Gangster Disciples showcased his ability to build a structured and far-reaching organization, even from behind bars. And Perry Rourke, the founder of Dead Man Incorporated, relied on brutality and fear to keep his grip on power unshaken. Each of these men shared one common trait: their ability to lead and command even when faced with the harshest conditions. Their crimes were not limited to acts of violence. They created systems, networks, and organizations that operated with precision and purpose. For authorities, their influence posed a challenge that traditional incarceration could not solve. That is why ADX Florence exists. It's a facility built for those who cannot be controlled, a place where communication is cut off and isolation is total. For these 5 men, ADX became the final destination, a place designed to strip away the power they wielded for so long. But even within the confines of the most secure prison in the United States, one question lingers: can we ever truly stop the influence of individuals like them? Or is it merely redirected, waiting for the right moment to resurface? These stories serve as a reminder that the fight against organized crime and the men who lead it is never truly over. For every network dismantled, another may rise, and for every sentence handed down, the question of justice remains. Are these individuals truly contained, or have they simply adapted, finding new ways to assert control in a world that has tried to silence them? Out of these 5 men, each with their own story of power, control, and violence, which transfer do you think was the most justified? Was it Omar Pory, the man who brought the Bloods to the East Coast, building an empire of fear and loyalty? Or was it Ronald Heron, whose words and actions blurred the line between music and menace? Maybe it was Tex Hernandez, whose ability to manipulate people and smuggle contraband made him a threat too great to ignore. Could it have been Larry Hoover, the mastermind behind the Gangster Disciples, who led his organization with structure and precision even from behind bars? Or Perry Rourke, whose brutality as the leader of Dead Man Incorporated created a legacy of violence that could no longer be tolerated? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear which of these stories impacted you the most. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the lives of some of the most dangerous criminals in America, don't forget to hit the like button. Your support helps us continue to bring you more stories like this one. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you'll always know when our next video is ready. Thank you for watching.